You fire away with your questions, Madgie, and I'll answer them for you.
Perfect, thank you. So, say when we look at Meghan Markle and her parents, so she has like a mother that is a lower mid-range, and her father is a middle mid-range B, I think. And so she's a middle mid-range A. Could she have been anything really else because of the model that she had? Could she have been like a lesser?
There was the potential for her to become a lesser, but also given the fact that there is an intermittent facade from Doria and a facade from Thomas, she's more likely to A, have that as part of her genetic makeup, and B, be exposed to that as part of the environment, so that she sees, although she won't recognize that's what it is, in the way that children learn by copying and replicating. So it's similar. My mother is upper mid-range, whereas I'm the ultra. So my awareness goes way beyond what hers is. I have upper lessers in the family as well. And with my mother, she's an intelligent woman. I'm far more intelligent than she is. My father was a very intelligent man. He wasn't a narcissist. So my intelligence comes genetically from having two pretty intelligent parents, and then something more, which is in a way just one of those quirks of nature that we can't necessarily always explain. Although, for instance, it's fictional. You take Sheldon Cooper. You know, he's got a father who's not particularly intelligent, and his mother not really either, and he's a genius. Where did that come from? It's one of those quirks of nature. So sometimes that's what can occur, that you could have a narcissist that's a greater, could potentially come from quite low evolved narcissists by virtue of a quirk. But more usually, you're going to get a similarity in that, in the normal sense, where children are fairly similar to their parents when we're talking about non-narcissists, because they're influenced by their parents' genetic makeup and the environment. So largely speaking, we can always point to anomalies, of course, but largely speaking, a child that's polite tends to have polite parents. A child that is well-mannered tends to have well-mannered parents. Like follows like. A child that's somewhat wayward may well have parents that are not particularly, that they were wayward when they were younger. As I say, it's not always the case. We can point to instances, of course, where you have some very well-mannered and polite parents and their child's a little shit. So there are instances where it does change. But largely that genetic and environmental influence is particularly imposing on what the individual becomes.
For Meghan Markle, when she's going to raise her children, I think that every narcissist, they have like a golden child, a scapegoat, and a black sheep. Or is that not always the case?
It's not always the case, but it is certainly more of the case compared to a non-narcissist environment. Every parent, if you were to ask them privately, would admit that they have a favorite. They do. They're human beings because, for instance, let's say the father's very interested in football, and he has one son who's not that bothered, and his other son really loves football. They've got a shared interest there, and of course he loves both of his children, but he would privately admit, yeah, he's a bit more like me. We have more in common. He sort of achieved the things that I wanted him to achieve. Therefore, there is a bit of favoritism. I try not to let it show, and he might not ever let it show, but privately he would admit that favoritism, and it could be, for instance, one of the children has not fulfilled the dreams and expectations of the parent, possibly leaves a bit to be desired with regard to their schooling and behavior. So they still love them, but notwithstanding, they are left thinking, yeah, I wish you could be a bit more like your brother or your sister, kind of thing. So in conventional, if we can call it as such, non-narcissist dynamics, favorites occur. It's more prevalent, of course, within the dynamic with a narcissist parent because of the absence of emotional empathy and the necessity of control. So you don't always see it there, but if it is going to appear, you're going to see it more likely within a narcissistic dynamic involving a parental narcissist.
And what does that impact does on the kid? Like, let's say you were the golden child, right?
No, not as such. I was viewed favourably, but there was a huge amount of expectation placed upon me. Within our dynamic, there wasn't really a scapegoat. Although I was blamed for a lot of things, I was also held up as a shining example of brilliance as well. So in a strange kind of way, I sort of alternated at times between what you might describe as a scapegoat and a golden child. I think if you were to ask my siblings, they would say they didn't regard me as the golden child because although I was the one that the highest expectations were placed upon, I was also the one that suffered the most. And my siblings would recognize that.
Why is that?
Essentially because the level of expectation that was placed upon me by my mother was higher than that of my siblings. So she saw me as the one that was always going to be the high achiever. And therefore, if there was any suggestion that I wasn't going to do that, she would lash out at me. She also formed the view that in order for me to come to fruition, so to speak, it was basically I needed to be taught a lesson to ensure that I understood that that's what I needed to become. And I would get blamed for things, certainly. And there were instances where I was triangulated with my siblings where they would say, or rather where she would say to them, you need to achieve in the way that HG has done. And that's why he gets treated the way that he does. Look how he's turning out. Now, of course, the excellence that I achieved was not really anything to do with what my mother was doing in the sense of her methodology, but rather a reaction to me saying, to put it bluntly, fuck you. I know I'm the only one that's going to look after me, so I'm going to have to be the one that achieves. And in such circumstances, I was doing it for myself. Sure, she thought that she benefited from it as a consequence of she thought that she was the one that was guiding me, encouraging me, etc. But I was actually doing it entirely for myself to demonstrate that I was capable, etc. So for me, it was more about my lack of control environment was out and out abuse in terms of physical and sexual abuse, but also what I call grade B syndrome, whereby no matter what I did, it was not good enough. I was always told I could have done more, gone further, achieved better. And that has imprinted upon me in terms of my mentality today, in terms of always striving and always doing. But I don't do it for anybody else. I do it for me.
Do you think you would have become the greater if you were not in that position as the scapegoat golden child?
It's an interesting point. I think that has, because it caused me to want to strive for myself, I think it's had an impact, yes. To say whether I wouldn't have been the ultra were it not for those factors, well, no. It certainly had an influence, but a lot of that has come about whereby, through whatever genetic peculiarity you might say, that I've been afforded this level of insight. I've not worked at this level of insight. I've worked at understanding more about myself through, for instance, having due regard for what people have told me, for the interactions that I've had with the good doctors. But it was always there, and it was just a case of unlocking it, I suppose. With being the ultra, it's that high level of self-awareness combined with the ability to convey this information to people. That's what sets me apart from others, you see.
And with your other siblings, I know your sister is a codependent empath.
Yep.
Was it because she was a scapegoat, a black sheep? Did it have any impact on that? Because I think it was that made it so that she couldn't form that narcissist barrier.
Yeah, again, there might have been instances where she would have been possibly scapegoated for a period of time, but both her and my brother received better protection from my father, so that any attempts really to scapegoat them were somewhat ameliorated by his intervention, which is why they didn't become narcissists. there's potentially, of course, the genetic predisposition might have skipped them. But a large part in why I say they didn't become narcissists as well was basically that my father shielded them. He was an intervener. He steered a lot of the abuse away from them, which in effect became more deflected onto me instead. There was only so much of him to go around. And I think when I've thought about this to a greater degree, I know that he thought, and this is because I think he detected my psychopathy, that he formed the view that I could look after myself, which was a preposterous thing to say in relation to a child. And I think he then came to regret that position, because when he saw the way that my mother was starting to behave towards my sister and brother, he then galvanized him into action, as if he almost looked at it and thought, I really ought to have done this for HG, but I didn't. So now I'm not going to let those two suffer in the way that HG has. But in so doing, he still, I think, was affected by the mindset of believing that somehow I could deal with it better, and that he didn't have enough of him to go around to protect 3 children. So he focused on the other 2. You know, it's a little bit like the tsunami's approaching and you've got 3 children, you can only save 2. Which do you choose? He chose them rather than me.
And what type? I know your sister is a codependent because your father protected her, and your brother is a normal, or is he also an empath?
No, my brother, he's a standard empath, and my half brother is a normal.
Okay, and your father, is he an empath also?
Or was, at least, because he's dead.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. You didn't kill him.
I'm trying to show compassion to God. Okay, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I understand yours is a standard response to learning about the death of somebody, but I'm logical and factual. You didn't do it, therefore you needn't say sorry to me.
Yeah, I know. But so he was an empath. What type of empath was he?
Well, he certainly exhibited saviour with regard to his cadre. I think there was some martyr in there as well, with the way that he stuck by the side of my mother. I think ultimately his prevailing school would have been standard also, with some codependency in there. And
Harry is a codependent empath.
I beg your pardon?
Prince Harry, he's a codependent empath.
Who?
Prince Harry.
Oh, Prince Harry. I beg your pardon. Yes, it was just distorted.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's quite all right. No, it's not your accent. No, not at all. I can hear you clearly. It just distorted. With Prince Harry, yeah, there are, of course, those that don't believe that he's empathic, and I can understand why that's the case. But you only have to look at his behaviours before she came along. And as I've maintained, he has strong narcissistic traits which she's harnessed, and she has fed into some of the disenchantment that he's had and exploited it. And he's basically under her spell, both in terms of the manipulations and the emotional thinking. I know aspects about Prince Harry. I can't say too much because it would give away aspects of my identity. But what a lot of people think they know about him, there is a very caring side to him. People mentioned about, the way that he's treated animals and so forth, and he can be hot-headed. But there are many, many instances of where he has exhibited emotional empathy. Of course, it's become a bit of a stranger now as a consequence of the way that he has behaved towards his family. That's in a sense has become his emotional empathy has, in a strange kind of way, almost vanished. You see it intermittently, of course, in his dealings with certain people, but it's almost become a bit of a stranger to him as a consequence, and that shows what happens when you have the influence of a narcissist upon somebody. Now, he's codependent in that he finds validation in relation to ensuring that he gives and gives and gives to her, and of course she takes and takes and takes. She is that black hole into which he pours himself. And there are occasions, of course, where because of his strong narcissistic traits, he will fight back, and there are arguments. He's not completely a doormat with her, but in public, he allows himself to be treated very much like a puppet. Sit here, stand there, go there, move over there, out of the way, etc. And I would say that probably in relation to, excuse me, his cadre, I'd suggest probably the prevailing would be savior.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And what are his trait? His like major narcissistic trait and major empathic trait, and how has she corrupted them?
Well, in terms of his narcissistic traits, I think in terms of the ones which you would see as being the strongest, I think anger is is one of the strong ones. I think resentment is. I think envy is. I think argumentativeness is as well. I think those are particularly prevalent in relation to his behaviours. On the empathic side, I think that he is somebody that wants to heal and fix situations. So I think there's a strong healer side. He's very caring. So I think that would be seen to be pretty high as well. I think he has a keen sense of justice as well, which shows, for instance, in his crusade against the newspapers. It might not necessarily be the most logical approach that he's adopting. And, of course, he's being egged on as ever by his wife. But that taps into his need for justice also, which also will link back to what happened to his mother.
Okay. And are those traits, are they going to be, like, is he going to give those traits to his children? Like, is he going to protect his children, or is he so engulfed in Meghan Markle that he won't even be like those savior traits will not come out for his children?
Well, of course, you first of all have the big debate about do the children exist, etc.
I'm going to think that they exist.
Okay, yeah, fine. So if we assume that the children exist, and that they are his children, and that he spends some time with them, I see him as somebody that would seek to protect the children with regard to the way that she behaves. I think there are two factors that will drive that. The first is naturally his emotional empathy. The second, he grew up without a mother and a rather distant father, and therefore I see that he would, despite him not being the sharpest tool in the box, will nevertheless not want his children to experience what he experienced. And therefore I would see him, although they do seem to spend quite an amount of time away from the children, I should imagine that in the home environment he spends more time with them than she does. And therefore he would have some influence with regard to being an intervener and potentially protecting them. Again, I think that in certain instances he would sacrifice his own happiness for the protection of the children. I don't see that he would go down the route that you sometimes see, which is where you have, let's say, for example, a classic example of this is that a single mother who has got some children, and she gets a new boyfriend who takes on the role of step-parent, and that step-parent abuses one of the children, or maybe both of the children, and the mother essentially allows it to happen because she's either in fear of the new boyfriend in terms of him beating her, or in fear of losing, say, his financial contribution, or just losing him as a partner, and therefore, rather sadly, puts her needs ahead of her children. And somebody with emotional empathy, unfortunately, can do that as a consequence of the external stressor that they're experiencing by virtue of being with an abuser. There are, of course, many people that would say, I'd fight tooth and nail for my children. There is no way that I would let that happen. But of course, it can happen without you necessarily knowing about it, because these predators are particularly sneaky in the way that they go about it. And then there are some instances whereby the parent kind of knows that there's a problem but doesn't want to face up to it because they don't want to lose their partner. So the child might complain, but they don't really want to accept that this person is capable of such behavior, so they turn a blind eye to it. In other instances, you get some who are even complicit in it. You wouldn't get an empathic individual going along that route. There'd be possibly where two narcissists come together, or a narcissist and a normal come together, that you would have such behaviors. But I would see with Prince Harry, he'd be looking to protect the children, yes.
Yeah. And what type of parent, like lower mid-range and every type of narcissist, they can be parents who are really present or like absentee parent. I feel like they always kind of act the same way if they are in the same type of narcissist. Like, let's say lower mid-range, I find that either they're not there, or when they're there, they're basically like the law.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like, what type of parent would she be? Or yeah,
with her, as you identify, she's mid-range. So there's a lot of facade management, telling the outside world what a great parent she is. And wanting the world to see that she, thinks the world of her children and so forth. And there are certain mid-range narcissists that would helicopter around the children, that there would be, micromanaging them. I don't see that she would do that, because her circumstances are a little different compared to many mid-range parents, in that she has the money to afford nannies, whereas many mid-rangers wouldn't be able to do so. And therefore, because her needs become before the children, what she would be doing is, it would almost be a case of, put them in something nice, instructs the nanny on what they should wear, sees them, nods with approval, now take them away. Like treating them like the objects that they are. That obviously, if somebody calls round at the house, she'll put on an appearance of playing with them and talking to them, but the rest of the time she'll be away in the study, scrolling through social media to see what people are saying about her, engaging in her Zoom calls, leaving it for other people to deal with the children. So the only time she will really deal with them in the household is where other people might be there, so she needs to put on the facade of being a caring mother, where there's television cameras recording what's going on, so again she needs to roll out the facade. And beyond that, she'll leave it to Harry, her mother, the nanny, to do most of the parenting. And for her, she'll either be asleep, scrolling through social media, trying on clothing that doesn't fit her, engaging in Zoom calls, basically dealing with all of the other things that matter to her, and letting everybody else parent the children. She's a classic example of, she'll talk about how wonderful it is to be a parent, but if you were to cross-examine her on it and say, well, what is it that you actually do? What actually do you do with your children that you enjoy and is so wonderful? She'd be hard-pressed to tell you, because she doesn't do much with them. I don't see that she goes around beating them or things like that. I think she's just very distant from them, that she, looks at them as if to say, yeah, okay, you're here to make me look good, but don't get under my feet, don't make demands on me, etc. I would see that she's quite a cold parent with them, that the only time she would turn on the apparent loving with them would be when other people are watching. And I think, in a way, Harry probably thinks to himself, well, as long as she's not being nasty to them, I'll pick up the slack in terms of giving them love, and won't necessarily be saying to her, oh, you need to do more, because of course that would cause her to turn around and lash out at him, and he's just trying to keep his head down. So I think she's a distant parent with them. I think she expects them, to behave like adults. So she would disapprove, like if they're running through the house making a load of noise. I think she would snap at them in such circumstances. But largely, she doesn't want too much. She doesn't want anything to do with them, save when it's there to make her look good.
Is that because she's a middle mid-range A? Because I feel like when they are lowered, I couldn't, even if my mom, I'm comfortable, but if I was super rich, I don't think my mom would leave my education to a nanny. She's way too involved. I'm too much of part of her facade.
Well, the thing with her, she is particularly self-absorbed. You see, one of the big indicators with regard to her behaviour is the fact that you rarely see the children. Now, you would get. This is perhaps one of the peculiarities of her status, because ordinarily you would get middle range A, who would be a bit like the helicopter parents that always be seen with them, showing them off, fussing around them, oh, little Johnny's achieved this, he's got the highest maths score, etc. Letting the world know that not only am I a brilliant parent, but look, you can see me doing it, interfering in the lives of the children, orchestrating everything for them, organising that they attend this extracurricular activity, they've got piano practice, now you're off to lacrosse, all of this kind of thing. But with her, what she does is she has the facade that's associated with middle range type A, which is, I want you, the world, to know that I really care, that I care about the little orphans, that I care about the starving people, that I care about people who've suffered online abuse, etc. I want you all to understand that I'm a living saint and I really do care. However, what she doesn't do is translate that behavior into activity. And the reason for that is that she regards her children as threats. That's why we don't see them, because not only is she not maternal with them and therefore would struggle to control them, because at the end of the day they're still very young, just 2 and 5, which, given my limited experience of children, sort of my nieces and nephews and other people's children I've seen, they do what they want, and you spend your time running around after them, and mum says no and get over here and stop doing that, etc. So given that she doesn't spend a lot of time with them, they're probably not that responsive to her, which means that if they were in public and they started misbehaving, she wouldn't be able to control them, which is naturally a problem for a narcissist. But secondly, were they seen in public, people would be interested in them and not her, and she can't stand that. Now, some narcissists can tolerate that because the children are an extension of them. So when someone comes along and says, oh, hasn't he got beautiful blonde hair? Oh, well, yes, he gets all of that from me. And although, of course, non-narcissist parents may say that, it matters much more to the narcissist that is the case. Now, with her, she can't stand to be upstaged. She really can't. She can't stand to be upstaged by Harry, by Catherine, by William, by the late Queen, and certainly not by her children. So, unlike many other middle-range type A who would be there sort of showing everybody, oh, look how good I am with the children, that part's missing with her. She is middle-range A in the sense of, I want the world to know that I'm a really caring person. I want the world to know that I'm compassionate. I'm a philanthropist. I involve myself in charity. I am compassionate. I am this living saint. But what she doesn't do, as we've seen repeatedly, is that doesn't translate into action. We see her going and giving some people some hugs in a hospital, but where is she out there digging a trench in the Democratic Republic of Congo to get water into a particular place? No, she's not. She's not there rolling her sleeves up and getting dirty. She's not sinking wells in Mauritania or whatever, is she? No, she's not. No. It's all the talk with her. Now, some narcissists will get out there and roll up their sleeves and do the action, but many will not, because, as I've made it clear on a number of occasions. It's all about the talk and not the walk. And she's particularly like that because if she can achieve it by talking about it, that's what she will do. So it's similar with the children. She'll tell you what a wonderful mother she is, but when have we ever seen her be a wonderful mother? We haven't. It's just her word for it. The limited footage that you've seen is obviously staged and photographs. You've not seen her, if you will, in the wild, walking down the road with them. Nobody's seen them, It's like when she went to the farmer's market. Why haven't you taken your children with you? Children like a little trip out there. No, doesn't bother. So she doesn't do that because, one, she can't control them, I suspect, and two, she doesn't want to be upstaged by them. She wants all of the fuel.
But why does she not see the children as an extension of her?
Because she does in certain instances, but the problem is twofold. I suspect in certain instances they do not come up to the standard that she wants.
They're not pretty enough?
Possibly. So, I mean, from what I've seen, if those children are the children, you wouldn't describe them as ugly children.
Exactly.
Okay, you might not describe them as the most photogenic that you've seen, but most children are cute in their own way. That's the nature of being children. But with her, it's a case of she'll have an idea of what they should be like in terms of ability and looks, and if they fall short of that, then they're a disappointment. But also the fact is, it comes back to, although they are extensions of her, they are a threat to her because she's built a rod for her own back by not exposing them particularly much to the public, so that there's a lot of interest as to what are they doing, where are they, what are they like. So her narcissism understands that. Should she ever turn up with them, people are going to be watching the children and not her, and she can't have that.
That is so weird to me because, I'm so to parent narcissists just being like, there is my child. So it's
well, some narcissists are like that, but remember, the child is only an extension to the extent that they meet with the approval of the narcissist parent, which is, you are my brilliant little toaster that does what you're told, that you toast to perfection as and when I put the bread in you. If that child doesn't look the way that the narcissist would expect, isn't as intelligent as a narcissist would expect, doesn't behave themselves, all of those things are a threat to the narcissist's control, and therefore they are not seen as an extension because you're not reflecting me, you're not being compliant. So the narcissists that go, look at my child, isn't he beautiful, isn't he brilliant, all the rest of it, it's because that child is largely compliant and fits with the image of what that narcissist parent wants. I suspect her children don't fit with the image of what she expects, and because she's not maternal, she struggles to control them, and therefore that means that because they don't represent her and because they're difficult to control, her narcissism recognizes they are going to upstage me, therefore keep them hidden. If they were representative of her, we'd be seeing lots of them because she'd want to show them off. If they were compliant children who always did what she wanted, she would show them off because then they are the extensions of her and are achieving that aim. But somewhere, for whatever reason, she doesn't see them as being of the standard that she would expect. Remember, they're objects. They are like goods in a store, and she evidently sees them as substandard in some way, which demonstrates a lack of emotional empathy to view a child in that manner. And then because she sees them as substandard and because she spends so little time with them, I suspect that they barely listen to her or do as they're told necessarily. I mean, we've seen on the limited instances, I know he was very young, but the time when she was reading to Archie, he was acting as if he didn't know who she was, that he was trying to get away from her to be with somebody who was off camera. And of course, she presents the child with what looked like a rather full nappy. he was only half dressed. And those are simple things which even I know, and I'm not a parent, but even I know that you would ensure that their nappy was changed and that they would be properly dressed. But it demonstrates that lack of connection that she has, that she doesn't see anything wrong in presenting him in that way. And then the child looks like he's trying to get away from her the whole time. She doesn't hold him naturally. And so that suggests that she hasn't got that emotional empathy which creates the connection, the sort of maternal aspect of caring for them, which means she will struggle, in effect, to control them in the normal sense of a parent controlling the child, not in a narcissistic sense. And therefore it becomes all the worse for her because she has no bond with them, because they won't do as they're told, because they barely see her, and there's no real bond between them, that translates into a threat to control. So her narcissism basically says they are not the price standard we want them to be. We also struggle to control them, keep them hidden.
Okay, because let's say for a little bit, one time we all know she's the one who keeps on sending those articles to Hello magazine, and and one of her, I hear your voice as a Hello magazine, but
Hello.
exactly. So she sent an article that was about how blonde with blue eyes Lilibet was, and she seemed really proud of it. So there's a part of me that's like, is that why she doesn't really want to present Archie? Is it because he has curly hair? Because she wants the child to look as white as possible?
Well, it's interesting again, and I'd welcome your perspective, obviously, as somebody who would be described as a person of colour.
Yes.
Here she is coming along saying, I'm a person of colour. And yet, what is she putting forward as the sort of ideal aesthetic? A white child with the blue eyes and the blonde hair, the Aryan ideal. So immediately, her supposed affinity to black people, black and brown people, that's gone in an instant. What is interesting is that when you look at the children, of course, with the hair colouring and so forth, they talked about the Spencer blue eyes and so forth. It's like it was as if she basically said, I want white children with blue eyes and blonde stroke or strawberry blonde hair. Yeah. And so, well, what about your ethnicity? Because she clearly doesn't really regard that. Spoke volumes in terms of how she sees herself. She doesn't see herself as mixed race. She sees herself as white. What do you think?
I know that she sees herself as white. That's why she keeps on because my mom and Doria are lower mid-range, and I just imagine, because I'm lighter than my mom, I just imagine myself going and saying, "Oh, my mom was seen as my maid." And I know my mom would kill me.
Yeah.
Because it's such a mammy stereotype. It's such a lie. Because she had an afro. Your mom didn't spend 16 years being seen as your maid. But that example is just to make it seem like your black parent is lesser.
Yes.
And then for me, I'm just fascinated at why people don't see how racist she is.
Well, I think many of them do. When you first saw her, you're a black person. So when you first saw her, did you think she's black?
I knew she was mixed. I watched Meghan on Suits before I knew about Prince. She's the reason why I know the royal family. I didn't know about the royal family before her.
Okay. Yeah.
But Suits was filmed in Canada, and I learned about Suits, and I saw her, and I was like, oh, that's a mixed girl. I'm going to support, and I watched the show. Yeah. She looks mixed. When you're black, you're so used to watching all the micro, trait, because everything is so whitewashed, and the 1%, like if you're 1% black, then automatically you're black. So it's so obvious that she's mixed. She doesn't look entirely white. And that's the point of the one drop rule, is that it's not about looking black, it's about not looking white.
I see.
That's why I'm like, you don't look white, therefore I know you're mixed with something.
Yeah, I see. When I first saw her, I actually thought she was Hispanic, that there was some Hispanic about her. I certainly didn't think she's black, because to look at her, she's not black looking.
Exactly.
You can, when you've been told about her having a black mother, you can see aspects of that with regard to, say, like when she was younger, the shape of her nose and her hair, and aspects of her skin color as well. But it doesn't stand out.
Like her. She looks like her mom.
I see. Yeah, but it's just interesting to have a black person's perspective on her.
Yeah. No, she is a self-hating black woman. There's been thousands of them in the history of America. The number of white passing black women that try to hide their experience as a black person. She's not a mystery. She's clearly she was in a white school with an afro. How would no kid tell her, you have an afro? Kids are assholes. But that she's so happy that the black gene pool is going out when you look at Lilibet.
I see. So would you regard her as racist?
Yeah, she is.
Okay.
She is a racist because even now she still acts as if she was white passing.
Yeah.
When you're a black person, I just show picture of her when she was younger at my Sussex, because I have a lot of family that has a Sussex squad and everything.
Okay.
And yeah. And I just show them a picture of her, and I'm like, is that a white passing child? And they're just like, oh my God, because we are all mixed. We were all raped by white people back in the day. So we all have like different ethnicity inside of us. But I have cousins who are with red hair and like super white, but they're still black because they have one drop of black blood.
Yes.
And she doesn't act this way. She's clearly ashamed that she had an afro. That's why she acts as if she would be white passing with an afro. That makes no sense.
Yeah. When I look at her, I see a woman that has always held herself out as being Caucasian.
Yes.
Such she wrote on her resume that yes. She has clearly altered the shape of her nose from a less black shaped nose, if I can describe it as such, to one that's more white. That she has, obviously with her hair, she never wears it as an afro. She always has it straightened. And that she has only ever dated white men.
Exactly. And she is ready to, as if America, who is 1,000 times more racist than Europe, like there are so many black artists that ran away from the United States to go to Europe, like Josephine Baker, James Baldwin, and they all said that Europe was less racist. But that lady who acts as if, oh, being black in America, it's so easy to white pass, which is a lie. Like I don't understand why black people like support her, because she's clearly against us. But
well, I was going to ask you about that, because as we know, that there is the Sussex squad, which has a lot of its members who are
my family
from black people.
Yeah.
And given the fact that you can see it, in effect, that you might say she's in a sense a traitor to mixed race, and you've described her as being racist. Naturally, I have my views about this, but what do you think it is that causes these people, certain black people to, and we know there are black people who don't like her as well. I've seen that on many occasions. But what do you think it is that causes certain black people to support her, notwithstanding the evidence that shows that she actually doesn't really like black people?
I think there are two categories of people. Like, let's say my mom, she hates white people. So because she's not saying like, oh, black people, she's like, they are racist against me. And so all they hear is that, oh, the white institution is the problem. And so since they hate whiteness, they're going to support her, because they're going to be like, they're just going to transfer their own feeling of how victimized they were, and they're going to put it on her. So there is the fact that she's fighting against a something that's so clearly white that
Yeah.
for them they're feeling like, oh yeah, we have to support her. And there are
And do they
others who
not?
have.
But do they not understand that it's entirely self-serving? That she harnesses white institutions when it suits her, and then complains about them when it suits her. But where do you see any actual activism by her in relation to supporting black people? You don't.
They don't care. They just want to hate the white institution and say, see, the system is rigged.
Yeah.
It's just about complaining and saying that, yes, white people are evil. And there are others who have a strange, I don't know if you know the show Bridgerton.
I know of it. I've not watched it.
So there's like it's like basically the history of England, but like we make like every ethnicity in it.
Yes.
And exactly. And so people are like, oh my God, they want that fantasy. They always wanted to be the princess. They always wanted to be like, they feel like, oh, if she can be the princess, then I can be the princess. Oh, they're refusing a black princess, so they would have refused me. So they just,
Yeah.
I feel like they're all self-serving. Like the people
Yeah.
who are just taking Meghan and being like, oh, she's fighting against the whites when clearly it's obvious that she's not.
Yeah.
It's just because they hate her.
Yes, your views accord similarly to mine. That I see that her supporters fall into the group of she serves a purpose for their own agenda, so therefore they support her. And then there are others who basically, and that I have. There's a long-standing blog reader of mine, a lovely lady. She went by the initial T on my blog. And she's not around as much these days. She pops in every so often to say hello to me. She's a lovely lady. And she contacted me a few years ago when I was first doing the stuff about This One's Wife. And she said, you know, HG, I was so excited at first because I thought one of us had got there. One of us had got there in the royal family, and that was lovely. And then she said, I was so disappointed with her behavior, and obviously when when you analysed her and said she was a narcissist, I was like, oh goodness me, that's so disappointing. And she is a very reasonable individual and can see it, but she also had that similar attitude of Team Black has got in there, if I can describe it that way.
Yes,
and I think many of her supporters are, just as you pointed out, they've always wanted to be the princess. They've always wanted to be the duchess. And so they get a vicarious thrill by thinking she's been doing it. And so they don't see her shortcomings. They don't see the evidence of her poor behavior. Yeah, they just think, I don't want to see it because I don't want to spoil the dream.
Because for me, I'm like, she's making a mockery of racism. If let's say a white person doesn't believe in racism, because we're all bigots. I didn't believe Johnny Depp. I thought Johnny Depp, a white man, obviously is guilty. Like we all have our prejudice. So let's say a white person looks, okay, let me learn about racism, and then they listen to Meghan, and Meghan is like, they said that I was from Compton. Like, why would the white person think that racism is still a thing if that is racism? So for me, I'm just like, she's such a danger to black people because she's making a joke of our suffering and acting as if she's a representative of black people, when she, even in her Netflix documentary, she said that brown and beige don't go well with the skin tone of black people.
Right. Which demonstrates, given that she's someone who wears beige so much, she clearly doesn't think of herself as black then.
And I've never heard that stereotype. Beige doesn't go on black people. Brown doesn't go. Like it makes no sense.
No, well, we all know when it comes to fashion with her, she hasn't a flaming clue, has she? So
no, it's just to show how racist she is. To be like, I'm not one of you.
Yeah,
that's how I feel. I'm like, why would you say that? Like, why would I just sit down on my documentary and say, you know what, blue doesn't go with white people? It's such a random thing to say. So for me, I'm just like, you're trying to tell us something because I've never seen you in other color. Like, she hates looking black in any way possible.
Okay.
But yeah, yes. So to come back to that, so if she was to choose which one would be a golden child, would Lilibet being blonde and with blue eyes be more of a reason for her to see her as a golden child than Archie being the firstborn and a male?
I think, given that as a somatic narcissist, that she has those drivers linked to appearance, and because you've identified the fact of, he's got curly hair, which causes her to pull her face about that, and that she's espoused this idea of the sort of Spencer, the Spencer blue eyes, etc. Harry talked about that, didn't he? Saying, that the Spencer gene was particularly strong. That in the circumstances, if that's what she sees as the ideal look for the child, then that's likely to cause Lilibet to be more likely to be seen as the golden child.
Even if Archie is male and higher in the line of succession and everything.
Well, it depends on what the narcissist prioritizes, and as I mentioned, because she's a somatic narcissist, appearance is important. So she, for instance, she believes that she's very clever. She's not, and there have been some suggestions, and I don't know how credible these suggestions are at all, that Archie might have some slight learning difficulties. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not. It may just be scurrilous gossip. But again, if that were the case, that doesn't fit with the ideal child, and that would be used against him by a narcissist. So, in some instances, because the child's the firstborn, they might get the preference. It very much depends. There's no set formula as to what will cause a narcissist to select somebody as a scapegoat or as a golden child. In each instance, it might be that they go for the child that's cleverer and they become the golden child, or the one that's sportier, they're the golden child, or the one that looks like the parent becomes the golden child. There's lots of different things that a narcissist might choose in order to give that child the status of golden child.
Okay. And does the golden child have more possibility of becoming also a narcissist?
They would have probably about the same as any other of the children, on the basis that being a golden child is a lack of control environment in itself. Because if the child remains a constant golden child, that means they are given more of a free pass with everything, so that they have a gilded lifestyle that's the proverbial silver spoon born in their mouth. So they similarly don't have any control, because everything's given to them. They're praised excessively, even when they perhaps haven't really achieved anything. They're allowed more readily to do what they want, all of which contributes to a lack of control environment. It's just perhaps seen as a less abusive type of lack of control environment.
Okay. And when you are the golden child, is it more probable that you go and become an upper lesser type A?
No, again, I think in such circumstances, you wouldn't necessarily be upper lesser type A. That could be certainly one of the outcomes that that would occur. Again, it's linked to issues of intelligence. It's linked to issues of charisma. Now, of course, upper lesser type A's can be very intelligent, are often charismatic. So if those factors are present, they may well turn into an upper lesser type A. Just because you're a golden child, that doesn't automatically mean you're going to be a particular subschool of narcissist.
Okay. And when you were, because you made the book Chain about your little sister, and you said that she was on the path of becoming a narcissist, but then it was stopped.
Yeah.
So I'm asking myself, is that the case for every empath? Are they all mini narcissists that were stopped?
Well, when a child first comes into the world, they are in effect like a narcissist, because when they cry, their needs are automatically attended to. So because an infant child is rather pathetic, it can't soothe itself, it can't feed itself, it can't go to the bathroom, can't entertain itself, etc. So it gets a pain, it cries, and then this person appears and basically goes through the rota of right. Do they need changing? Do they need feeding? Do they need burping? Do they need warm? Are they too warm? Are they too cold? Do they need soothing, etc.? And eventually one of those things clicks and the baby goes quiet. So the baby learns that every time they feel discomfort, they'll make a noise, this person appears, and the discomfort goes away. So that child starts off thinking that all of its needs are met by this person. And therefore they believe, in effect, although no child has been able to tell us this, of course, because they can't talk, but the starting point is that their needs are being met by this one person who only exists to serve the needs of the child. Now, as time goes on, that child has the capacity to develop emotional empathy, and the child is taught the value of sharing and patience and waiting and cooperation and putting others before yourself, etc. And thus they don't go down the route of being a narcissist, because not only are they having emotional empathy created within them, they're not being exposed to a lack of control environment. With the codependent empath, they start off on that route of going towards being a narcissist, but they will have the genetic predisposition in that regard, and they are subjected to a lack of control environment. So they get on that train that's going to Narcville, but along that journey, something stops them getting there, so that they, at the points in the railway, they go off to codependent town instead. So they were on the railway line to go to Narc town, but then something changed. Perhaps an intervener came along and protected them from the worst of the lack of control environment and sent them off to codependency town instead.
But can they go to like, let's say they are going on the path, because I suppose that you have to have the predisposition, because normal people, they are also baby narcissists, but then they just normal, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. That soon falls by the wayside.
Exactly. But then the empath and the narcissist, I wonder, like, do we both have the predisposition? It doesn't matter if you're a codependent, super, or contagion, or standard. We were all born with the predisposition to be narcissists, but then something happened, or is that only for... Yeah.
No. You will have individuals who don't have the genetic predisposition towards being a narcissist who become empaths. So,
really?
Yeah. They would never be a narcissist because they didn't have the genetic predisposition. Yeah.
Which one would that be?
Well, you would have with codependents, they are likely that they will have the genetic predisposition, and they're subjected to a lack of control environment. So they start on the route going towards being a narcissist, and then invariably that lack of control environment is arrested, so they don't get there, and they become a codependent empath instead. The standard empath, they don't have, they wouldn't have the genetic predisposition. So they would then become an empath. They could be subjected to a lack of control environment, but it doesn't. But because the genetic predisposition is missing, they don't become a narcissist. And what I'm going to do, and it's work that I'm working on at present, is explain how the various empaths are created by virtue of school and cadre, by reference to, is there, if you like, was the seed of narcissism, like the codependent, was the seed of narcissism in them, or was it not? So that's something I'm going to be going into in greater detail in those works which are in hand.
Really?
Yes. So you'll be able to read about all of that in due course. So you'll get further detail. So you can, it as a consequence, it's long-standing work that I've been doing in relation to extracting information from people about their circumstances and family to it's research that I've undertaken to then extrapolate from those results information to then determine, right, the type of empath that the individual is, what was their sort of origin story, and so that I can collate all of that information and then present it to my readers and my viewers to say, look, this is how the codependent is formed, this is how the standard empath is formed, and so on and so forth. So that material will be available in due course.
And let's say when you are like, because me, I have, I think I have like 20% to 30% codependent empath. Does that mean that I had the predisposition, even if it's not my majority?
No, that doesn't. That aspect relates to codependent majority. So having a sliver of codependent doesn't necessarily mean that the genetic predisposition was there.
And as a super, do I have any predisposition?
Well, you're trying to preempt me telling you about my work here, so
I know.
I'm going to close that down. I don't want to give away too much at this stage because I want people to read it. So consider yourself told off.
Okay, thank you. Okay, cool. Another question I have is,
yes,
I don't think that grader are that interested in having an intimate primary source as an empath. Like all the grader that I saw, they seem to go for narcissists or normals.
Okay, well, first of all, you might not have categorized them correctly as a grader.
Oh no, I'm just looking at you. I just look at what you gave me. So just the people
I beg your pardon, you're just looking at what?
The people that you referred as grader. So Obama, Mother Teresa, Bill Clinton, François Duvalier from 80. And other it seems like they don't, like, I know Michelle Obama, I suppose she's a normal because she's not an empath and she's not a narcissist. So.
There will be instances, of course, where a grader, because of their greater level of control and reach, is such that they are able to take on somebody who isn't an empath. They may have in their history a relationship with an empath. There will be instances where you do have, like for instance with the Clintons, a greater and an upper mid-range narcissist coming together. So there will be instances where certain graders will not take on necessarily an empath as an intimate partner, and you'll get the sort of narcissistic cementation that occurs. So of any sub-school of narcissist, or any main school rather, lessers and mid-rangers, of course, they can couple up with narcissists as well, but they are more likely to go after empaths. Of all of the schools, the one where they may not, or are less likely to, is the greater. But there will still be graders that will choose empaths. But because of their wider range of skills, and also keep in mind, many graders may not necessarily have an intimate partner primary source, but they juggle several intimate partner secondary sources. So they might have one that's a narcissist, one that's an empath, another one that's an empath, and so on and so forth. And because of their higher reach and their greater level of skill, they just juggle those, because the greater has less reliance on an intimate partner primary source compared to the other schools.
So why choose a normal or another narcissist? What's the point? Because
that individual, it's less about control and more about fuel, character traits, and residual benefits. So a lesser narcissist, remember, it's about the prime aims. And so the lesser narcissist targets somebody that's easy to control, because particularly lower lesser and middle lesser are lazy. So they want somebody that's really easy to control, who will provide them with plenty of fuel. And because the standard of the lower lesser and middle lesser is pretty piss poor, you don't really need to have too much by way of character traits and residual benefits to be attractive. If you've got all your own teeth and a job, that's probably pretty attractive to a lower lesser. Okay?
I see.
So, but what would be more important to that lower lesser is you are easy to control, okay? And that you fountain with fuel, and yeah, you've got your own teeth. You can, you'll make him meals and do his laundry. So he's not bothered about the fact that you might have a degree in ancient history. That's of no use to him. He's not particularly interested in the fact that you're well connected to the United Nations. That's of no interest to him. The lower lesser wants somebody who's easy to control, fountains with fuel, and with a smattering of character traits and residual benefits. Okay?
Okay.
So that's their priority. And basically, in their fuel matrix, the intimate partner primary source makes up somewhere in the region of about 80 to 90% of their fuel provision.
Okay.
Then when you take mid-range there, it's sort of 60 to 70% of their fuel provision comes from the intimate partner primary source. So they're still pretty fundamentally important for fuel. Okay? They are better at controlling an empath than the lower lesser, the middle lesser. And so they've got more skills available to control. Therefore, if they can pick someone who perhaps is a little more difficult to control, but with that, they want somebody who's got more character traits. They want someone with more residual benefits. They'll obviously want, and fuel provision still remains important, but isn't as critical as it is with the lesser. So if you were looking at what's the priorities, with that lower lesser and middle lesser, they really need somebody easy to control, who provides lots of fuel, and character traits and residual benefits are much less important to them. Mid-range, they want someone that's comparatively easy to control, but they don't need to be dead easy to control. They want someone that's still pretty good with fuel provision, but they don't have to provide tons of it. But they expect more subconsciously from character traits and residual benefits. With the greater, they find it a lot easier to control. So for them, I don't need to have all of my eggs in one basket. I'm able to control lots of different people. That also, I don't need to rely on one person for the majority of my fuel. A greater might take, if they have an intimate partner primary source, they might only provide 40 to 50% of the fuel because they've got so many other extensive interests. What's of greater benefit, of greater interest to the greater, is more character traits and more residual benefits. So you'll see of those prime aims, they shift in emphasis dependent upon the subschools that you're dealing with.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, that's so much clearer, because I was always asking myself that. And why is it I feel like that in most couple, when I look at when they are two narcissists together, it seems like they go upper lesser A go with upper lesser B, and then the middle mid-range and the mid-range stay together?
Well, I mean, that's possibly just anecdotal experience on your part. You can find a variety of combinations. Of course, you're not going to find a lower greater hooking up with a middle lesser.
Okay.
Because that would just be too tempestuous.
Okay.
Yeah, as mentioned, an upper mid-ranger might go with a couple up with a lower greater. For instance, you could get a lower mid-ranger that would go with a couple up with an upper mid-ranger. You could get lower mid-range that might go with upper lesser type A. You could get upper lesser type A that would go with middle range type A. So there are those combinations, but they're more likely to want somebody that's kind of adjacent, to, either similar or adjacent to them, not several subschools away.
Why
that would be too problematic.
Because of the facade, no facade?
Well, in such circumstances, you could have, for instance, an upper mid-ranger interacts with a middle lesser, but it won't last long because it'd be too tempestuous. The upper mid-ranger probably wouldn't be attracted to them in the first place because they wouldn't have the character traits and residual benefits that they would want. So they're unlikely, they might just choose them as a one-night stand. And then, of course, the middle lesser, recognizing that they're onto a good thing with the upper mid-ranger because that upper mid-ranger probably has money, has a good job, has status, so that all appeals to the middle lesser. But the middle lesser's problem is that upper mid-ranger will be too difficult for the middle lesser to control because the superiority that the upper mid-ranger exhibits would get in the way, because they'd be turning around and sort of criticizing the middle lesser. You don't even know how to use a knife and fork properly. Why would I take you out for dinner? And of course, the middle lesser would react badly to that.
That makes sense. So the closer they are, like, the less the other one is going to threaten the control of the narcissist.
Where narcissistic cementation is going to take place, it's more likely to occur between two narcissists who are closer in sub-school. Yeah. Whereas, as mentioned, two narcissists can easily come together from any sub-school, but it won't last. They're more likely to clash. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know, my parents, when my dad had his stroke, my mom was there, and at the beginning I thought it was like because she was kind, but I suppose it was only because she was trying to find a former IPPS.
Right.
Yeah, narcissist. You're an interesting species.
We're fascinating.
Yes, you are. I don't know if you know Marvel, but I see narcissists as scrolls. So for me, I'm just like, you seem like you can morph to other being.
Oh, really? I'm not familiar with that, but it sounds interesting nevertheless.
Yeah, I see you like that. I'm like, sometimes you just move, and I'm like, oh, that's a scroll, but that's the narcissist. But
okay.
Yes, another question I have is about. Because when you talk about the different intimate primary source and how all that field matrix works, you don't talk about what happened when the narcissist has a crush on someone.
What happens when a narcissist has a crush on somebody?
Yeah.
Well, in effect, that's a form of infatuation, which is the standard operating procedure for the way that a narcissist looks at somebody when they're looking to ensnare them intimately. So having a crush is just part and parcel of the seduction.
Okay. And how long can they have a crush without it being reciprocated?
Well, I think in the circumstances that they would try for a number of weeks to bring that person under control. And if they weren't getting any reciprocal response, they would then break off and look elsewhere.
Okay, that's interesting. And, well, I cannot ask about the Pat and narcissist. Let's see. Contagion and Pat. They attracted to greater?
Yes, I mean, any empath is attracted to another narcissist. It's part of the symbiotic relationship. And of course, the considerable darkness that a contagion experiences when having involvement with the greater narcissist can often prove compelling to them, that they are inextricably drawn to that individual, notwithstanding the sort of emptiness that they experience. They can't help but be drawn to it, like the proverbial moth to a flame. It fascinates them. They want to learn more. They want to understand. They want to see perhaps if somehow it can be corrected. Because remember, they don't necessarily realize that they're dealing with a narcissist straight away. They for instance, you see, with contagion empaths, they would be more in terms of an adherence to the concept of energy transference. Now, I often get asked about this because I talk about fuel and the effect that it has. And some individuals talk about how obviously it's draining being around a narcissist, and it is, because the narcissist gives you a hard time, so it tires you out. The narcissist ties you up in knots or goes round and round in circles, contradicts themselves, so it becomes exasperating and frustrating. The narcissist might have you running around doing lots of things for them, so that becomes tiring. The narcissist creates so much chaos, you find yourself repeatedly firefighting, and therefore that also becomes tiring. So being about a narcissist, because of the way that the narcissist takes their toll upon you, is draining. Most people would admit to that their involvement with the narcissist drained them in some respect, physically, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, financially, drained them of their friends, drained them of their relationships, all of those things. Now, some people, they talk about my kind as being like energy vampires, whereby that they believe that we actually physically draw energy from you, which you, in a way, you could almost sort of see transferring from the victim and bolstering the narcissist. Now, I don't physically transfer any energy from anybody. I draw their fuel, but that's their emotional response. So I'm not actually like a soul sucker, putting my hand on their head and going, sucking out.
You're not a dementor.
No. There'll be those that would describe me as demonic, but so I'm not actually physically drawing energy from them and transferring it to me. However, I understand that there'll be those that will perceive the dynamic between narcissist and victim in that way. And that's typically the contagion empath, because they talk about energies. So to them, it will feel like energy is being taken from them and given to the narcissist. Although I can tell you from my perspective, it doesn't work that way. What edifies us is your emotional output. We're not actually physically taking energy from you, but a contagion empath will see it differently because they have a different perspective, and they are more likely to see it as actual energy being taken from them and given to the narcissist, in the sense that you see like in a film, you know, in science fiction, or, you know, like one of the Marvel films or something like that, where there is actually physical transference of some substance, i.e. energy. You know, you would see like ghostly lines going between the victim, a little bit like in Harry Potter, where the the Dementors suck the life out of them. I think that's the way that they would be more likely to see it. As I say, from my perspective, that isn't how it works. It's fuel that we take, but we certainly have a draining effect upon you because of the way that we abuse you, leaves you run down, exhausted, ground down, etc.
And narcissists, when they look at a super empath, like for me, I don't understand how I have two narcissist parents and I came out a super empath, because I'm like, are they the one who made me a super empath?
Well, again, you're trying to get round what I said earlier on. So
I know.
You'll have to wait, Madgie, and find out in the future. So
I was waiting for the creature one for I don't know how long.
Well, I'm a busy man. It'll all be worth it when it comes.
I know it's gonna be so worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's say for a super empath, most narcissists are scared of me, right?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're scared of you, but a super empath has the capacity to cause problems for a narcissist with regard to the drawing of battle lines, if you will, drawing a line in the sand, which threatens the narcissist's sense of control. And in those circumstances, that could represent as some form of experience of fear. Remember, narcissists do experience fear, where ones which have no psychopathy will experience fear, and they will experience fear as a response to threats to control.
Okay.
And the narcissism generates fear as the appropriate response to compel the narcissist to do something about that threat to control.
Okay. So a super empath is more likely to threaten the control of a narcissist.
Well, any empath can threaten the control of a narcissist, because it's actually fairly easy to threaten the control of a narcissist. All you need to do is be talking to somebody else when they want you to talk to them. You threaten their control. All you need to do is say no to a narcissist. You threaten their control. So it's really easy for it to be done.
That's insanity, but wow, yeah.
For instance, if in the course of this discussion, like you picked up a dog, if you started sort of talking to your dog and not to me, that is a threat to my control. Now, it wouldn't cause me to lose it and start shouting and swearing at you and throwing things around at this end. But it's a threat to my control, and I would take action to bring your attention back onto me, which I would invariably do with an exhibition of a bit of charm and a bit of a joke about you paying attention to the dog and not me, so that you'd laugh and then apologize and talk back to me. So I'd maintain my facade of being a professional and engaged individual, rather than losing my shit and going berserk with you.
I see. So you say that at 9 years old, that's when the narcissist, like that's too late. That you either are or you're not at 9.
In my experience, from what I've seen and what I've understood in the development of individuals, it's around that age. As with anything in life, that there's no it's not 8 years and 364 days, and that's the absolute cut off. It could be in some individuals it formed sooner and it was done at 8. But generally speaking, what I say to people is that if you haven't got any signs of it and the child's 11, for instance, 10 or 11, they'll be safe. So it's around the 9-year mark, whether it's the beginning of being age 9 or towards the end of being age 9, it might vary. As we say, you don't. It's not like Logan's Run, where if you get to a particular age, you have to go to carousel and there's no debating. There's no hard and fast rule. It's just based upon what I've witnessed in all of the instances of where I've examined it further, that I came to the conclusion that it's around the 9-year mark that it's formed. For some, it could be earlier,
Okay. And for yourself, when did you discover, like you said, because greater, they know what they are, but when does that happen? Is it like something that they feel like I don't know if you know the case of Brian Copperbegger. Okay, it's a really weird name, but he killed I think 3 or 4 people in the US, and he kept on talking about I'm empty, and like really that feeling of just like I feel nothing, I'm not normal. Is that how it starts? Or is it just because it's a
well, even though a narcissist might talk about that feeling of being empty, that doesn't necessarily mean they know what they are. They are just talking about what they're experiencing. So that doesn't correspond with absolute knowledge. You don't wake up one morning and go, "Oh yeah, I'm a greater narcissist." It doesn't work like that. There is a realization.
How does it work?
It's first of all, of course, I use the terminology greater narcissist. So they might refer to themselves as something else. Yeah. But what they will do is they will understand that they manipulate people. They will understand that they like to manipulate people. They will understand that they require the reactions of other people. They will understand that they experience an emptiness and that the reactions of other people make that sensation of the emptiness go away. So they will understand various aspects of being a narcissist and know about themselves. And at some point, in the way that I did, they will come across something which tells them, if you are experiencing all of these things, that means you're a narcissist. And then they will go. So no aware narcissist, as I say, wakes up on their 18th birthday and goes, I'm an aware narcissist, aren't I? They will maybe for a long time understand, yes, I manipulate people. I get off on manipulating people. I love getting a reaction out of people. It makes me feel alive. It makes me feel strong. It makes me feel powerful. I am superior to other people. I don't get upset. I don't experience happiness. So they'll know all of these things. And then one day they'll come across something which tells them that those things equate to narcissism. And then they'll realize, right, yeah, I'm a narcissist.
Okay, so they need to read, like to learn what is narcissism to be considered a grader.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, for instance, you might know, right, I have white skin, and I'm interested in, football. I like drinking beer. I enjoy watching cricket. I have a sense of fair play. I enjoy cucumber sandwiches. Oh, right. All of this means I'm an Englishman. Right. Okay. So it's a silly analogy, but the point is that you recognize lots of traits about yourself, and then you'll come across a piece of knowledge which will then tell you, oh, because you experience all of these things, that means this is what you are. And also, the aware narcissist will go, yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, that accords. The unaware narcissist, of course, will go, that's not me. No. They reject it.
How do you know that they know what they are?
Sorry?
How do you know that they know what they are?
How do I know?
Yeah.
Well, for instance, in some instances, it's how they talk about people. It's the way that they carry themselves. It's the way that they behave. It's the things that they do. So there's a whole range of indicators that demonstrate that they are aware of what they are doing. They're aware. There's almost like tells that take place with regard to certain things that they'll do. It's almost like, as I've mentioned before, that when you get two aware narcissists, they recognize one another, and there's almost a sort of like a nod and a wink to one another about, like two sharks swimming by that recognize one another.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't they feel threatened by the other person?
No, because there's, in a way, a strange kind of respect that exists, because it's like, I know what you are and you know what I am. So it's a little bit like both training nuclear weapons at one another. You have the capacity to cause a problem, but they have a capacity to cause a problem to you as well. And because you are more evolved, you recognize the benefit in just basically swimming past one another. There's no need to get entangled. Now, there will be occasions where graters get entangled. It happens.
For example.
But there are many instances where it's not necessary, and that's the difference. Whereas a less evolved narcissist would look to assert control and then get chewed up and spat out by the greater. The greater and the greater recognize one another and think, yeah, I could probably take them, but I don't need to risk that, because the greater isn't stupid. The greater recognizes that there is much to be gained by maintaining peace as there is as going to war.
Okay, it's like, François Duvalier and JFK, they hated each other.
Yeah.
And they were two graders, so they were like fighting together.
Uh-huh.
Is that, why would they doing that?
Well, in some instances, of course, the stakes are greater because of the positions that they hold. So you might have a greater who is a politician, and you might have a greater who's a pop star. There's no real reason for those two to have any kind of conflict. But if you've got two greaters who are the leaders of countries which are bordering one another, then there's a greater potential for conflict there, because I want what you've got, and vice versa. Well, it all depends. One greater might be more resourced than the other. One greater might be able to pull in some allies, which then means that they can defeat the other. So it's not just about sort of, the two greaters don't strip to the waist and sort of wrestle one another. There are lots of different ways that they might go to war with one another. War in the conventional sense, war, for instance, through industrial espionage, a takeover, and one might be able to outmaneuver the other because they've got superior resources available to them, or that they moved first, they moved fastest. Or in some instances, neither wins, and it's just a war of attrition. They grind each other down.
Okay. Because can you name like another conflict between two graders that impacted history that you can tell me?
Off the top of my head, one doesn't spring to mind. You'd have to leave that one with me to go into, a bit of looking around.
Because I have to admit, I found the François Duvalier and JFK hilarious.
Right. I mean, that's not something I'm fully familiar with. But yeah, to go and find another example, I'd have to do a little bit of looking around. So leave that with me.
Because psychopathy, is it like it's a survival mechanism?
Well, indeed, it is a form of survival mechanism that causes a person to be created in a particular way so that they are able to deal with the world around them in a particular manner. And of course, in some situations, psychopaths thrive because they're not held back by emotional empathy, that they are hyper-focused. They don't experience fear.
Are these psychopaths without narcissists?
Well, a psychopath will always have some narcissistic traits. And they usually have a pretty high dose of narcissism, or rather high dose of narcissistic traits. But they might not necessarily be a narcissist. So I think the way to look at it is that not all narcissists are psychopaths, but all psychopaths do have narcissistic traits.
But even normal have narcissistic traits.
Correct. But psychopaths will have stronger narcissistic traits.
But are they like some psychopaths that are not narcissists, they are just psychopaths?
Yeah, there are some psychopaths there are narcissistic psychopaths like me. There are narcissists who are not psychopaths, so pure narcissists, and there are pure psychopaths who aren't narcissists.
Like who?
Well, an example doesn't immediately spring to mind, but there are individuals who are psychopaths who aren't narcissists. So they don't need fuel. They often don't really bother with people. And they only cause a problem to people when people get in their way. So often these individuals, they're focused on success, for example. They get bored readily, but they might channel that into something else, where they alleviate the boredom through, for instance, having a wide range of interests, lots of business interests, doing a lot of exercise, reading a lot of things, being well versed on various subjects, turning themselves into some kind of polymath. It doesn't necessarily translate into them going around chopping people's heads off, of course, because a lot of psychopaths are non-violent.
Okay. Most serial killer, are they narcissist psychopaths or only psychopaths?
With serial killers, I haven't determined the split as to, are more narcissists are more psychopaths. So you will get a mixture that comes from both psychopaths and narcissists, and also narcissistic psychopaths.
Yeah. Let's say for a greater narcissist, how are they created? Do they need to have like an upper mid-range type of parent, or can a greater be created if their parents are like lesser?
The likelihood of a greater coming from lesser parents is pretty limited, but it's not impossible. There isn't any sort of set formula that would result in you getting a greater. It's about naturally the formation of the narcissist first. So as you know from my existing work, you need that genetic predisposition, excuse me, and that lack of control environment to create a narcissist. Now, with a greater, you have certain criteria that make that identify that individual as a greater. So intelligence is one of those factors. So generally speaking, a narcissist who is intelligent is likely to have intelligent parents. Not always. You sometimes get the situation where you get a child who's very intelligent and his parents are of moderate intelligence. So, but in general terms, it's often the case that where you've got intelligent parents, you have intelligent children. And part of that, of course, comes from a genetic passing down of that intelligence, but also the environment as well. Because if you've got intelligent parents, it's highly likely that they'll have good jobs, which means that they earn good money, which means that you're likely to have more books in the household, and that they're more likely to expose that child to a range of differing activities and pursuits, which means that they have greater experiences and they are perhaps tested so that they have that capacity for intelligence, but they build that intelligence. They don't just stifle the potential. Yeah, so it's a little bit like saying money goes to money. It's similar sort of, intelligence goes to intelligence. But you can have an instance of like maybe a child that's a prodigy where the parents are quite average. So similarly with the narcissism, in general terms, you would be looking at having somewhere in the genetic lineage a superior narcissist. So there may be if you have a greater narcissist, that doesn't mean that they're automatically going to create a greater narcissist.
Okay.
It doesn't work like that. But there are certain factors that appertain to them being a greater, for instance, linked to the level of charisma, which could come down genetically, level of intelligence, which comes down genetically. So whilst one would say, look, a middle lesser could potentially create a greater, it's highly unlikely. What you're looking at is it's more likely that a greater will create another greater, or upper mid-range might create another greater. You've got to sort of be closer in the rankings for it to occur.
Is that why so do all greater have psychopathy?
No, not necessarily. With the greater, it is linked to the level of intelligence. It's linked to success. It's linked to charisma. It's linked to the range of manipulations. It's linked to Machiavellianism. It's linked to awareness and other factors besides. So psychopathy doesn't necessarily feature, but it often is found.
My other question is, can a greater make another greater? Like the Kennedy, like the big Papa Kennedy who decided that all his children must be a president. Was he a greater?
Again, I haven't analysed him, but potentially a greater could create another greater, yes, and that's most likely to happen.
Really?
Mm.
Like who?
Well, again, I can't provide an immediate example of where that's occurred. There are instances of people that I know, but you won't know who they are, so there's no point me mentioning them.
Exactly. Okay. But most greater are hidden, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, you get some greater, amongst the people who are entertainers, but a lot of greaters are actually individuals that most people have never heard of, would never go anywhere near. So that's why when people go, I was involved with the greater, I go, you probably weren't, because they really are rare beasts, and they often move in circles that basically ordinary people don't go anywhere near. So you'll hear of some because they're pop stars or international footballers, maybe, or you'll get some because they're political leaders. But there's a lot of political leaders who are different types of narcissists, not greaters. A lot of the greaters, for instance, a lot of the upper greaters you'll have never heard of because they function in the shadows. Middle greaters tend to have more entertainers amongst them, so you'll recognise more of those. Lower greaters as well, you tend to find them more in industry and in politics, and you might not, again, have heard of them. So there's a lot of greaters that most people would, if I was to give you a list of the ones that I know, people go, who's that? you wouldn't have a clue who I'm talking
Mm.
about. But I'm not going to do that because it would give away my identity. So
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
yeah.
But okay. So, but you've never been interested in making babies.
Are you offering?
Yes. No. But yeah, no, you have never thought about doing that as a
No,
continuation of your legacy.
no, I'm not interested in extending my legacy that way. I basically would see children as getting in the way.
Okay, why?
Because they would place a demand on my time and an expectancy that's there, which basically, although I do what I want, nevertheless, it would be an added stratum, which I wouldn't want in terms of potentially threatening control. I move around a lot. I travel a lot. And I need to be able to do certain things, often at short notice. And if I had the complication of somebody saying, well, you need to go to little Johnny's piano recital, it'd be like, no, I don't. But then that creates friction, which I would be able to deal with. But why choose to have that as an issue to have to deal with when I don't have to choose it? So it places a further demand that I don't need. So whilst I'm quite sure I would create fantastic and beautiful and handsome offspring, be very talented.
Exactly. You don't want to put a little odd god junior on Earth.
Yeah, exactly. Little HP god running around. But ultimately, because of essentially my own selfishness and my own effectiveness, it means that it is far more effective for me. And I made a conscious decision a long time ago that was not going to be the case. And there are many people that would say, good. And I understand that.
No, I don't agree. You're going to give every advantage to your child. It's super practical to have a parent that's so high.
They would be hugely effective, yeah.
Exactly, like a mini army. And let's not lie, the world was given to us by the narcissists. So it's normal that you are the one. Yeah. How did we survive? I know it's narcissist. Like, we wouldn't have survived the beast and everything without you.
Indeed. Good.
But you're going to kill us all. So thank you for that.